Hello and welcome to Combat Mission Red Thunder. I'm your host Chu, and today we'll be playing a small scenario titled Tankovye Desant as the USSR. It's June 1944. Our company of T-34s and tank riders are hot in pursuit of a German force. We're coming up against a river crossing soon, which is suspected to be garrisoned by a few German units. So our objectives here will be to recon that river and take it by force if needed. This will be a nice introductory scenario to Combat Mission Red Thunder, and it'll also give us a demonstration on some of the new engine upgrades coming from the previous Combat Mission games. At our disposal is about 6 T-34s, 2 platoons of regular infantry, or rather regular tank riders armed primarily with SMGs, and as you see here we have a few pioneer units armed with a flamethrower, which is a new addition to the Combat Mission series of games. So, we're coming up close to the river now, so I get my troops to sort of scatter and I get my infantry to disembark from the tanks and I move them forward. Here, I'm going to send a single scouting team forwards because there is a little farm complex up near the river. Now, this little farming complex is supposedly garrisoned by enemy infantry, so I send a 3-man team armed exclusively with SMGs up to check out that building. I see that the building complex looks pretty clear, so I decide to move some infantry up in support of my recon team. Furthermore, I get my second platoon of Russian tank riders armed with those PPSH little SMGs, and they're also reinforced by 2 little teams with the DP machine gun to move forward through a little forested path close to the river. Now the game's briefing system tells us to expect contact over here at the farm, so I'm going to get our guys to advance slowly and methodically through these buildings. We're going to have to clear these little buildings, but luckily after this location is secured, it'll give us a nice location to observe the other side of the river. So our SMG troops are just going to crawl up here and see what they can find. It looks like there were a few minor troops present here. It looks like that little group of German infantry, I see that on the back of one of their bodies was a Panzerfaust, an anti-tank weapon. That might have been a tank hunter squad. Afterwards, we locate a few enemy units on the other side of the river. Namely, we can see one MG emplacement. It looks like the Germans are dug in on the other side of the river. They're not necessarily terribly dug in, though they have a few foxholes on that other side, and it looks like they are going to put up a fight for this river crossing. I'm going to get my tanks to come up here and provide support with their main cannon so that they can just hammer those locations and take them out. Coming from the other Combat Mission games, it would seem as though for Red Thunder they've definitely upped the ante on the amount of damage and accuracy on practically every single weapon system. So as this battle sort of develops, we'll expect to see some major losses on both sides. I'm gonna get my Russian tanks to just absolutely shell whatever traces of enemy infantry there is on the other side of the bank. In the meantime, I'm gonna bounce my infantry up. First, want to confirm that there's no other troops close to this farming complex, and then I'll get the rest of my troops to move up and attack this river location. Now, on our right flank here, one of my platoons of infantry have sighted a squad of infantry and is suspecting that, that the enemy has a tank on the other side of the river close by. I'm going to get them to probe forward to get to the very edges of this little forested area and to see what they can find, and namely to pin down the enemy infantry on the other side. Now, I don't want to expose my tanks just yet. Playing as the Soviet forces, we have a great abundance in vehicles, infantry, and in general everything. However, the Russian troops tend to be fairly inflexible. Their infantry aren't exactly highly well trained and are prone to break. Though it'll be an interesting fight, seeing as how the Germans don't exactly have too many things here. In the meantime, on the left flank, I'm getting my recon squad to push forward ever more. I see that there is a small guided little passage filled with bushes and stuff to cover our infantry to here. It's a little defile, I suppose, a little valley just in the middle of this terrain, so I'm going to get my infantry to push forward through there. In the meantime, more and more targets are being spotted, and I see a Stug either immobilized or just sitting sideways on the other side of the river. I think it's time to send forward some scouts to check out that other riverbank, seeing as how the Germans aren't exactly firing back. With the Russian squads and squads in general, you can split them up into further smaller teams inside the game. However, with the Russians, once we split our squads, they do take a little morale penalty if they can't see the other parts of their squad. I'm going to send a two-man team just to briefly check out the area. And in the meantime, I'm fairly confident that there's no other tanks around, so I move up my swarm of tanks as a whole so then they can cover each other, and assign target arcs towards that enemy tank so then one of them can spot it and take it out. Now, combat mission simulates information sharing upon the various different units you have on the map. And what I mean by that is, while we can see the tank, our commander's perspective is a composite of what all of our units can see. With that said, we'll have to rely on the command links between our units so that our tanks are informed of that enemy Stug, and then our tanks will just sort of open fire and take that thing out. Currently my tanks are opened up, meaning that all of the hatches on them are open for greater visibility. However, it looks like one of the German machine guns managed to pick off one of the tank commanders who so happened to have his head up a little too high. One of my tanks manages to spot the Stug and opens fire. It managed to land a hit on the side, penetrating it, but doesn't look like it took it out. Now that one of these tanks have spotted it, it'll relay information, and as you saw there in the last little blurb, two of the other tanks managed to see that vehicle, and well, first tank managed to destroy it on the second shot, so it didn't really have a chance to react. Right, so continuing from here, I see that there's two little defiles in the terrain filled with bushes and whatnot that our infantry can push up in. So I get them to move forward. In the meantime, our tanks are going to lay in on the enemy's infantrymen hiding inside the woods here with HE ammunition. Another tank location is revealed. Looks like our infantrymen and troops highly suspect that there's a tank lying at one of those locations. Moving one of my command HQs close to the tank so that the company can relay information to that platoon HQ. He's going to hop on that tank and he's going to relay that information to the tank, which is going to relay that information to the rest of the tanks. It's a neat little feature that they've introduced with the tank riding system. I can hop on the tanks and my infantry will be able to communicate with the crewmen a little bit better than previously if they were on the ground. And another enemy tank, another enemy assault gun, a Stug, makes itself apparent. And it is in full view of my tanks, and it looks like it appeared and has decided to retreat. Well, we're going to drop a few shots into it. It looks like my troops were able to spot it. Perhaps one of the infantrymen saw it, related to a platoon HQ, and sent that information all the way to a tank, which then opened fire on it. Now, in the meantime, I managed to get our 2-man recon unit across the river. The Germans are starting to open up from some positions further back that we didn't have suppressed, so we're starting to take a few casualties. Another new feature that they've introduced is the tank decals. It's a nice little touch. It'll tell you where you actually hit enemy vehicles, and likewise the enemy shots will do the same to your own. So far this battle looks like it's going pretty well. Our tanks are just knocking pretty much everything on the other side of the river just clean off. Our infantry are getting fairly close, and as soon as we identify new enemy positions, we're going to suppress them with our tanks. Our infantry again are moving through these covered parts of the map, getting closer and closer to the riverbank. Once they're there, they'll cross and engage in close assault with the enemy. This will be especially devastating with their PPSH submachine guns. Furthermore, it looks like we managed to make contact with yet another tank coming down on the road. The battle seemed to be going pretty well, until the appearance of what seemed to be a German tank ace. A Stug appeared, one coming down the road, and managed to take out one of my T-34s immediately. Luckily, I had 2 other T-34s spotting this tank, and they opened up. One of my tanks opened up and actually hit a tree in front of that tank, which absorbed the shot, and that led to its downfall, unfortunately, as the Stug managed to retaliate and take that tank out. Furthermore, the other tanks in the back were then taken out by that same tank. I think this is just a mixture of bad luck and the conditions on the Eastern Front, really. The Germans had incredibly well-trained tank crews, and obviously these were veteran tanks coming in at 1944. But likewise said, I mean, the Russian army at this stage wasn't exactly a bunch of militiamen either. One general rule for this game was actually, if you typically used one American or German squad to do something, the Russians would typically require a platoon. And if you needed, say, one tank for the other factions, the Russians probably could use also a platoon of tanks. So, getting our troops to move forward. I'm getting my flamethrower to move forward here. I still have 2 34s, so it shouldn't be that big of a problem. Now, the German forces are reorganizing after the defeat of our tanks, and namely over here they set up a little ambush area. My Russian infantry were moving forwards here and suffered tremendous losses at the hands of about a half squad of German troops hiding inside the forests here, dropping very accurate fire from close range and piles of grenades. Need to get rid of that Stug somehow, so I'm starting to push up on our left flank here. Now, this area seems to be mainly cleared, and I'm tempted to go and drive my tanks to try to flank that Stug. My infantry, in the meantime, are still engaged inside the forests. The German infantry have pulled back to locations where My tanks just simply can't reach them without risk on firing at our own infantrymen, so unfortunately we just can't do that. I bring up my flamethrower troops, and they have been steadily clearing up this forest here. With the left and center forests cleared, I managed to sneak one of my tanks around the side, back at the main road here, and I see that the enemy tank is, well, we can't see it right now, but our troops suspect that it's still in the same location as it was firing earlier. So I get my tanks to move on the hunt, and it looks like we identified a few more enemy troops, so my tank engages them first. We gain observation on that enemy tank again, so I move in two of my tanks to engage that assault gun. My tanks are going to come in here, and hopefully they're going to bank a few shots into it. With the enemy Stug gone, that'll be one threat down. However, we're going to have to occupy this green shaded zone to win, and the Germans still have a little squad organized inside the forests here, which we just can't get to. We're going to have to clear this location before we can successfully just sort of settle in, prepare for the defense, and wait until the match times out to win. In the last little phase of the game, we managed to clear out those infantrymen, at least to a acceptable degree, and we managed to end the match. Unfortunately, one of the downsides was that I did lose another tank clearing out that main road. In the end, we did manage to capture all of our objectives, so we sustained heavy losses as well. So, I had a pretty fun match here. The stats will be up shortly. It looks like the Germans were down to 15 men at the end of the game. However, we did lose 5 of our tanks and practically half of our force. This is PPGchu. Hope you guys had fun watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe for more videos. Combat Mission Red Thunder here is available on www.battlefront.com. It'll be posted in the link below.